Is Sean Payton potentially holding back his first-round quarterback in Bo Nix? Can the Denver Broncos find a way to keep up with the high-octane offense of the Dallas Cowboys, who they will face in just a matter of days? And how much are you buying the NHL's explanation for Gabe Landeskog's overturned goal and controversial rules interpretation against the Utah Mammoth, who they ultimately lost to in overtime? All things to come on today's rundown, but we begin with a special shout out to our friends at Denver Regenerative Medicine. Guys, if weight loss has been a struggle for you, it's time for something real. At Denver Regenerative Medicine, we use full-strength GLP-1 medications with doctor oversight. You can start today with a free consultation and get real results for under $300 a month. Book now at denverregen.com. And the Colorado Avalanche today, where we will start the program, suffered an unfortunate second overtime loss of their otherwise pretty impressive NHL season in 2025 to the Utah Mammoth, who are fixing up to be, at least in a microcosm of the Colorado Avalanche's perspective, kind of a tough matchup. There have been two games where the Avalanche have given up 30-plus shots on goal in this young NHL season, and both of them have come against the Utah Mammoth. So clearly, Utah is profiling as a team, similar vein-wise to what we've seen from the Dallas Stars, the San Jose Sharks in the pre-COVID era, who we'll come back to a little bit later, the Vegas Golden Knights, etc., that are proving to be stylistically tougher offensive matchups for the Avalanche defense. This game tonight, though, the big headline and story coming out of this one, other than the Avs suffering their second overtime loss of the young season, was the goal overturn ruling that came early in the second period, where Mammoth winger Dylan Guenther was struggling to get the puck out of the zone, clearing it away in an attempt after it comes off of the board and then off of his skate, where Valeri Nichushkin comes to intercept the puck on the forecheck, successfully does it. And even though he doesn't touch the puck, does Val, until it is already in the Utah end, he is called for a delayed offsides as Nathan MacKinnon and Arturi Lehkonen are still in the process of moving their skates off of the ice during the line change. The goal after Val Nichushkin successfully corrals the puck and then moves it into the slot for a Gabe Landeskog goal is overturned, and the broadcast, the viewers, and certainly Jared Bednar and the Avalanche, all very unsatisfied with the ruling. The NHL's Situation Room issued the following statement about the goal decision, saying, quote, "Video review determined that the actions of Valeri Nichushkin caused the puck to enter the Utah zone while Nathan MacKinnon was in an offside position. The decision was made in accordance with Rule 83.2, which states in part that any action by an attacking player that causes a deflection or rebound off a defending player in the neutral zone back into the defending zone, a stick check, body check, physical contact, etc., a delayed offside shall be signaled by the linesperson in that situation." Now, referencing Nathan MacKinnon's offside positioning in that ruling brings forth NHL Rule 83.1, moving the decimal point back one there, that says, quote, if during a delayed offside, an attacking player in the attacking zone elects to proceed to his player's bench, which extends into the attacking zone, to be replaced by a teammate, he shall be considered to have cleared the zone when both skates are off the ice, and the linesperson judges him to have left the playing surface. You will remember back in 2019 during the NHL postseason against the San Jose Sharks, where Gabe Landeskog, ironically also involved in this situation, was called for an offsides, which negated a fantastic offensive play for the Avalanche because of the bench door positioning and where the Avalanche were attacking on that side of the ice during that time. So it came up into light in the 2019 postseason. It's come up to light in series against the Seattle Kraken, and it comes up again tonight where the Avalanche are caught in a situation where the location of their bench door during a line change when they are on that portion of the ice comes back to bite them as Arturi Lehkonen in front of Nathan McKinnon are still trying to get off of the ice, and Nate's skates are still on the ice when Val touches the puck that's already back behind the blue line in Utah's end. Now, that portion of it, to me, is frustrating from a logistical standpoint and just the way that the game flow has to take place during that time. It's just kind of an unfortunate situation sometimes that teams are put in when their zone happens to be in that respective area. But this ruling as a whole frustrates me the way that it did so many Avalanche fans watching the broadcast, and confuses me the way that the ESPN broadcast, who had a rough night, was confused in that moment, because it feels like with this interpretation of the ruling, and that key word, interpretation, that the NHL Situation Room laid out means that NHL officials are using subjective interpretation, not of a concrete action like where the puck moved, what it came off of, etc., but of the intentions. There is an interpretation of an intention for Valeri Nichushkin that causes a delayed offsides penalty, bringing in NHL rules 83.2 and 83.1 to negate a goal that ultimately cost the Avalanche an opportunity to win a game in regulation, where they ultimately lost in overtime in pretty quick fashion. And if we are going to get to a point in the NHL where the pace of play is blisteringly fast at times, and the puck movement, especially for a team like the Avalanche, who emphasizes smooth and fluid motion across the ice up both ends, I'm starting to question if this is kind of like holding in the NFL that can be called in so many different games across so many different situations, and now you're entering a subjectivity there about when it's called and when it's not. Because in all honesty, Valeri Nichushkin was making a great hockey play. That ruling punishes Val for engaging in a forecheck and successfully intercepting the puck to then turn around and generate offensive scoring opportunities, in this case, which converted to a goal. And we're going to punish that? Is the Utah Mammoth player, in this case, Dylan Guenther, does he need to be afforded a reasonable right to clear the puck? And now you're going to have a situation where Val or any player in that defending situation has to worry about whether or not he's engaging in a penalty-like action for making what is in all reality a hockey play? This is like pass rushers in the NFL wondering if they hit a quarterback too hard, even though that's what they're designed and charged with doing on a specific play. I think this whole thing is sloppy. I think it's messy. I didn't like the explanation. I know Jared Bednar didn't, because he said so after the game, and I completely agree with it. It's one game in an overtime loss early in an NHL season, but man, that is a frustrating way for the tides to turn and the ice to flip on the Colorado Avalanche, when in all actuality, it did appear that from a hockey standpoint, regardless of the letter of the law that the NHL can hide behind, they did what they were supposed to do in that situation and just made a good hockey play to capitalize on a situation. Again, I'll be curious to see how much that translates into future games for the Avalanche and across the NHL. And it's kind of got my ears perked up to wonder how much I'm going to monitor whether or not this is just something that the NHL maybe is going to try to emphasize more or not, because I think, as I mentioned, that interaction feels like it could happen in so many hockey games on a night-to-night basis over the course of an 82-game NHL season. Shifting gears to the Denver Broncos, I'm starting to bounce a question back and forth in my head, and I've talked about it briefly here over the course of this week on this show, surrounding Sean Payton, the head coach of the Denver Broncos, and his quarterback in Bo Nix, who is about halfway through his sophomore season in the NFL, and the combination and pairing, which seemed to be completely in sync and intertwined over the backstretch, especially of the 2024 season in Bo's rookie campaign. I don't know if that tandem has kind of come undone a little bit, but it feels like there's more knots and kinks in that rope than there were in 2024, and certainly an outcome or a situation that we weren't expecting with another full offseason and more better weapons around Bo Nix, at least on paper, to be able to utilize in conjunction with a more balanced run game. And now I'm starting to ask the question, as many are, what is specifically wrong with the Broncos offense that is leading to such stagnant and slow starts and only being bailed out in a handful of instances by some pretty heroic, historic, and explosive fourth quarter finishes? And once that problem is diagnosed, whether it's lack of creativity in the play calling, too many pre-snap responsibilities or formation changes, shuffling in and out throughout drives and throughout games, once that is identified, who should the finger be pointed at most firmly in terms of causing the harm and potentially standing in the way of the solution? And the two players at hand, I guess the two players used in figurative terms there, are Bo Nix, the actual player, and Sean Payton, the coach. And it starts to become a little bit of a chicken or an egg situation when you're talking about the Broncos' offensive struggles and whether they start with Sean Payton or they start with Bo Nix. Because the two outcomes in that fork in the road are essentially Sean Payton is calling an offense that is bland and vanilla and predictable for the majority of the NFL game because his system is outdated. It's been adapted to. The game has, quote unquote, passed him by, and he's not scheming guys open as much as it may seem that he is. Or the Broncos offense is coming across bland, vanilla, and predictable because Sean Payton is calling a game that he feels he has to call because of limitations with his second-year quarterback and a lack of confidence in said quarterback to be able to carry out and execute the offense that Sean really wants to, that he has ridden to a Super Bowl victory and used a Hall of Fame quarterback to be able to build upon. One may be causing the other. They may both be happening simultaneously. And I don't think that Sean Payton's offense is as predictable or easy to diagnose as what would cause the result on the field today. I also don't think that inherently in a vacuum, Bo Nix is an objectively bad quarterback. I know that this game against the Giants drew a lot of comparisons to Tim Tebow and Tebow Mania, right? The way that the Broncos played so poorly and gave the Giants little to no resistance on the defensive side of the ball for 3.5 quarters before exploding in one of the most historic and prolific fourth quarters in the history of the NFL. But I don't think that Bo Nix is Tim Tebow, as James Merrillat and others, have certainly tried to use the moniker right-handed Tim Tebow and all that. I think that Tim Tebow wishes, in some respects, that he could throw the football the way that Bo Nix does. Bo Nix's deep ball certainly hasn't looked very good this season. James Palmer pointed out on DenverSports 104.3 The Fan this week that when you look at the data, Bo Nix has an argument to be the worst deep ball thrower in the National Football League so far in 2025. And I think that the evidence there supports that. I mean, you can think of multiple deep balls against the Colts, the 3 infamous deep balls against the Chargers that led to that walk-off loss in week 3. And then you're looking at this game against the Giants where the overthrow moniker and narrative was real. So both Sean Payton and Bo Nix, I think, have dirt on their hands when it comes to the mess that has been the Broncos offense. But if you're asking me which is the chicken and which is the egg to proceed or precede the other, I think that Sean Payton is calling the game that he's calling because there is a lack of faith in the execution of this offense, whether it's from Bo Nix or in the offensive line's perspective, in the run blocking and pass blocking game, or in the wide receivers to convert and make the catches and run the routes that Sean Payton has laid in place to scheme them open. I think a lack of faith in the execution of his players is what is leading Sean Payton's offense to look the way that it does for as long as it does in these games week to week. It's the only explanation that I can think of, because I think that by dumbing it down to the level that it is and using the highest percentage throws that you can possibly make as a virtual extension of the run game, the way that Sean Payton uses screens on almost 20% of his offensive plays in the passing game, that is the only way that I would imagine he can say, I can run an offense that I have confidence that the players are going to execute. Mike McGlinchey has talked about a failure of execution. Bo Nix has talked about a failure of execution. We've seen the Broncos rise to not just being one of the most penalized teams in the NFL this season, but a team that is near the top of the list in terms of total drops in the passing game this season. They are among the top 5 teams in that category as well. So I think between the chicken and the egg in this situation that precedes all else in the Broncos' offensive struggles is that Denver as an offensive unit has not executed to the level that gives Sean Payton the faith and trust to open up the playbook beyond what we've seen and convert on it with any kind of reasonable consistency or success rate. And that's got to change. It has to change because NFL defenses, even though their job is made harder by the league itself, who wants to promote and encourage offensive production because it's better for the viewing experience, NFL defenses are smart and adapt properly. And if you give an NFL defense with weeks of film to be able to study a bland, vanilla, and predictable offense, the way the Broncos have kind of molded themselves into, eventually the tide will turn and you will be unable to convert despite the fact that you're limiting yourself to some of the highest percentage opportunities and plays that you can run. You will be unsuccessful in doing so. The way that the Broncos were unsuccessful in doing so for 3 quarters and change of that game, the way that they were for about 3 quarters of the game against the Philadelphia Eagles before they had an 18-point fourth quarter to overcome that deficit, and the way that they may find themselves in a multi-score deficit against the Dallas Cowboys offense that boasts one of the best rushing offenses in the NFL, and now with a healthy CeeDee Lamb to go opposite of George Pickens for Dak Prescott, one of the more prolific and dangerous passing threats in the NFL. Not even to mention Jake Ferguson, who is prolifically performing as one of the best tight ends in the NFL in 2025. Also coinciding with an area that the Broncos have struggled to defend for years and years, which this year is no exception. And now that we know Dre Greenlaw's 1-game suspension will be upheld, there will be another hurdle and roadblock in their way in that regard as well. So there's a lot to keep tabs on for this team here in Denver as they still, in sole possession of first place in the AFC West, have everything that you could possibly imagine to play for, from a division-winning perspective, something they haven't done since the Peyton Manning era, from an AFC standpoint in terms of the larger playoff picture, where they have a chance to not just make the playoffs as a 7 seed in the wild card and hope that they don't fall victim to the trend of 7 seeds since the NFL's playoff expansion, just getting their doors blown off by whoever the number 1 seed was, in last year's case, the Buffalo Bills, but actually have a chance to potentially host a playoff game in the Mile High City and give themselves one of the better home field advantages in the National Football League and set themselves up to continue to build blocks off of last year's season, which turned around so many stigmas and narratives here in Broncos country. But if they're going to do it, the offense has got to be better. There's no if, and, or but about it. Sean Payton would tell you that. The players would tell you that. It's not rocket science to know that that's the case, but it seems to be rocket science, or at least in the direction of the scientific process, to figure out why the heck it's not working and who the heck needs to be most charged with making it better. We will see how it shakes out as the week continues to progress. The NBA season kicked off last night with the Golden State Warriors and the Los Angeles Lakers. Luka Doncic looking like he is primed for a potential MVP caliber season in LA as LeBron James waits in the wings with an injury to start the season. The Denver Nuggets got a preview and a sneak peek at their upcoming opponent, the Golden State Warriors, this weekend, who will continue to try to hold on to the last bastion of the Golden State Warriors dynasty as Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, and company try to make another return to the postseason in the Western Conference. And the Avalanche, yes, they have 2 overtime losses this season, but they have not lost in regulation. The goaltending, even though they gave up a higher goals average than they have thus far through this season, That seems to be a dynamic of the Utah Mammoth matchup with the way they are able to constantly put pressure and shots on goal. And I expect and continue this Avalanche team to move forward with its offensive dominance that has started and led at the helm by Marty freaking Necas, who continues to prove that Chris McFarland's vision for replacing Mikko Rantanen at a lower price per average annual value and spreading that depth scoring, that money around to depth scoring beyond the roster, there is a viable path to that plan coming to fruition. Marty Necas, just like Mikko Rantanen was for several years prior to leaving Colorado, appears to be on a torrid pace toward a 100-point season, and somebody that, alongside Nathan McKinnon, as he rides shotgun with Arturi Lehkonen, could be one of the best top lines in all of hockey. I expect that to continue the same way that I expect that Scott Wedgwood's incredible start to the season, playing in place of the injured Mackenzie Blackwood, will continue and get back on track as Blackwood works back into the lineup, giving the Avs what could be, once again, and I hate talking in hyperboles and absolutes, but the Avalanche could continue to have one of the best top lines in the National Hockey League and maybe the best goalie tandem in the National Hockey League. All things that point toward a pretty special season for the Burgundy and Blue, celebrating their 30th anniversary of the arrival in Colorado with their Quebec Nordiques throwback jersey lineups that we got a calendar of release dates for throughout the season. It's just a great time to be a sports fan here in Colorado, and we at Denver Sports 104.3 The Fan are here to ride along with you through it all. Stay locked into Denver Sports 104.3 The Fan on your radio dial, streaming at DenverSports.com or on the Denver Sports 104.3 The Fan app. Catch the great work of Will Peterson, Jake Shapiro, Trent Finnegan, senior Broncos writer Andrew Mason, and the entire team at DenverSports.com with all their written and video content at your fingertips 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. And like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can continue to interact live with and consume live digital shows like this one, The Rundown, from the Nosebleeds every morning on weekdays with Joey and Trent Finnegan. We've got the debut show of Freshly Graded and the Mile High Hoops and Hockey podcast coming your way now that football, basketball, and hockey season have all collided into one glorious sports cocktail. Have a great rest of your afternoon, and we will catch you at noon tomorrow for the next Rundown.
I do what I love what I do. Second nature to put in the work.